Well, hello, Danny, and congratulations on launching Awakenings, such an important topic, and I feel really privileged to be part of this, especially as you begin. I'm Deric Gilliard. I live in Atlanta, Georgia, and I have three or four things I would like to share in terms of my personal awakenings. I think the first was that I was seen as different, having grown up in the Deep South. I think I found out about segregation and racism at I got started to get an understanding of it at about 3 or 4 years old. My parents were both from agrarian societies. My father, one of 12 who grew up on a farm outside of Shreveport, Louisiana, and my mother, one of 10 who grew up on a farm outside of about 30 miles from Atlanta in a place called Stockbridge, which is famous as being the home of Dr. King's father, Daddy King. And I would say the next one was that, my mother was different. I think I was drawn to other people's mothers, my friend's mother, because my mother was not a warm and fuzzy kind of mother, the typical mother, the mama bear who would do anything to protect her children. I honestly never remember my mother hugging me and telling me that she loved me. And I'm not saying it never happened, but I have no memories of that. And so when I see it, as I often do with other mothers, and with my own wife and her children and our grandchild, it's really special. And I think it was made more special by the fact that I'd never met either of my grandmothers. Both had perished before I was, before I could remember. In fact, before I was born. And I would say another one that is certainly worth talking about is my father, who was a career military man. He was one of those people who was, I think, part of that greatest generation. He fought on two continents. He fought in Korea, and then he fought in Vietnam twice. And he also helped integrate the Army in Korea, actually. He was a guinea pig in that whole effort. And so he was very esteemed. He rose to the highest rank you could rise to as an enlisted man. He was a command sergeant major in the Army. And in fact, one awakening I'll add is after I wrote my first book, after I had worked for Dr. King's organization as National Communications Director at the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. And my first book profiled 20 of the people who we should know about, but mostly don't, who were critical to the nonviolent civil rights movement, of which Dr. King was the spokesperson. It's called Living in the Shadows of a Legend, Unsung Heroes and Sheroes Who Marched with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And they're black, they're white, they're young, they're old, they're men, they're women, from all over the country. And so I got an invitation to go speak to the troops in Germany just before Desert Shield, and my book had just come out. And so I was all excited, feeling good about myself, and asked my dad to go along with me because when I was 4 years old, he took the family to Germany, and we moved over to Germany. I lived there for 3 years and had great memories of Germany. And so that's one of the reasons I have a worldview. And when we got there, I'm thinking I'm the stuff because I'm going to speak at 7 military bases, and I had an attaché, and he took us all around. But when those soldiers saw my father, they were almost falling out because a lot of them I don't think had ever met a black command sergeant major, and he still fit his uniform. And so that was an awakening for me of how special my father was and how blessed I was that he was my father. And but later in life, when he started to, the Alzheimer's, that he and at least 10 of his siblings, there's only one that I know of that was not impacted by Alzheimer's. And he started to show signs of slippage. And my younger sister, who was his caregiver, and she was telling me that these things were happening. And she also was trying to tell some of his siblings. And of course, they all wanted to say, oh, well, he's just getting older. This is all part of the natural process of aging. And in fact, it was not. It was more than that. And so it became obvious in many ways. And I remember once he had come to live with us, and I could tell that he knew I was somebody close to him, that he had a trusted relationship with. But I remember the first time I asked him if he knew who I was. And, he looked at me and he told me he did not. And so that was a real awakening of how painful and how searing Alzheimer's is and dementia can be, and how they rob you of your relationships with people and his relationships with the world around him. And so that was a tremendous time in my life. And I want to share one positive awakening. I remember in 1994, and I had done a lot of things. I was a journalist. I wrote for USA Today for 10 years as a correspondent. I wrote for Time magazine. I wrote for a couple other papers. That was my training and my background. Started a PR firm for small businesses and small organizations that were in niche markets. And but of course, you had to catch what you kill. And so it was hard, keeping food on the table and paying bills. And I was looking for a real job. And somebody told me to go over to Dr. King's organization, the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. And I walked in the doors over there. And Dr. Joseph Lowery, the dean of the civil rights movement, he co-founded the Southern Christian Leadership Conference along with Dr. King and 60 other mostly Southern Baptist ministers. He hired me right away. And very soon after, almost immediately actually, I came to understand my purpose in life, who I was and what I was supposed to do for the rest of my life. And it was the beginning of my life of working in what I call justice ministries. And that is a ministry to the least, the lost, and the last in our society. And basically, it began my path as a historian, a storyteller, and somebody who speaks truth to power and sheds light on our current society and things that we have experienced in life. And so that led me to write my second book. When I left the SCLC 4 years later, after Dr. Lowery retired in 1998, I was hired by a white liberal nurse at the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. She was the regional director of the 8 southeastern states. She was a political appointee over the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. And she said she hired me because she wanted her office to more accurately reflect the people we served in the 8 southeastern states. So it was the beginning for me on a journey. So I worked through the Clinton administration, the Bush administration, the Obama administration, and the Trump administration, and the first 2 years of the Biden administration before retiring in 2022. And so it was, for me, it was an opportunity to help people have access to health insurance. We implemented the Affordable Care Act under Obama, of course, highly controversial, but we helped over 20 million people have access to health insurance for the first time, many of them. Of course, also we dealt with COVID, and that was, we know how COVID impacted us in our society. And so when I retired, I asked God to allow me to continue to work in justice ministries. And I actually happened to go to work with a white architect who's with a very large firm, a multinational firm. And the historian they usually use was unavailable, and they were putting in a bid to create the national monument in Anniston, Alabama, to the 1961 Freedom Riders who came south to challenge the segregated system that had just been ruled as outlawed, that's insisted now that public transportation sites, bus stations, maybe plane stations, these kind of places had to be fully integrated. You couldn't have white restrooms and black restrooms and white water fountains and black water fountains. And so when that bus came south in 1961, and this was a multicultural bus, there were white men on there, black men, and white women and black women, and they were coming to nonviolently. This was coordinated by a corps to challenge this system to see how they would be received. And of course, when they came deep in the South, they got to Anniston, Alabama, and they were attacked, and the bus was firebombed. And perhaps I can talk about that more on a full episode. But so this national monument was created to honor their sacrifices and their bravery and what they meant to this country. And so I had the privilege of working on that project for 2 years. And so those would be my awakenings that I wanted to share with you. Again, I'm an author of 2 books. The first one I mentioned to you. The second one is called it's called The Longest 4 Years of My Life, A View from the Field by a Black Fed in the Trump administration. And of course, you see what's going on in our society today. Just yesterday, all these government workers were essentially furloughed, and some may never get their jobs back because, this president says that good things will come out of this government shutdown. I was the part of 4 government shutdowns, but I had to work through all but one of them because I was considered essential employee, even though I didn't get paid like it. So it's been great being here with you. You can check me out on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Blue Sky. What am I forgetting? Something. X. And I'd encourage you to go to my website, which is www.myname, Deric, D-E-R-I-C, Gilliard, Gilliard.com. And you can just Google my name and you'll find a lot of things about me. But thank you for your time and look forward to seeing you again. Take care.